roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala oi pra quem te faz pirar. Se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir, desde que eu dou um bugão. Tá descontrolada toda essa cara e não para porque a coisa ficou mara. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Colarinha dos amassos, amassos, amassos. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Rafa Gomes, Digam no beat. Não perde tempo escolhendo a roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala oi pra quem te faz pirar. Se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir, que eu dou um bugão. Tá descontrolada toda essa tara e não para porque a coisa ficou mara. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Voar em altos amassos, amassos, amassos. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Vou te ganhar no cansaço.
The views, opinions, and representations expressed on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network and its website are those of the hosts, guests, and participants, and are not necessarily those of or endorsed by the network, its affiliated stations and broadcasts, the management, other hosts, or advertisers of the network. The shows found on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network can, but do not necessarily, promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and are not intended to treat, diagnose, and or claim any cure of disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, John, I'm glad at least you think so. Well, good evening, good morning, well, depending on your time zone. From the Pacific to the Atlantic to worldwide, you're listening to me, Gary, on Night Dreams Talk Radio. Tonight, you want to get yourself a nice cup of java, some hot cocoa, find a nice comfy chair, because our guest tonight, two of them, is Madam Della. She's a psychic, and JB, who is a horror movie producer, director, movie maker. They'll be on right after this.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
That is me, at least most of the time. But I don't know what happened last week, or the last 2 weeks, I should say, down at the compound, down at the harbor. The weather has been beautiful. Well, it's back down in the 60s, and the weather is raining. I don't know. I hope now this isn't going to be what we see all summer long. Who knows? Anyway, tonight we got Madam Della. She's a psychic. And we got JB, who makes horror movies, directs them, produces them, and whatever. Hey, guys, how you guys doing tonight?
We're doing good.
Great, Gary. Thank you.
How are you, Gary?
I'm doing good. And why don't you give a little bit of information about you guys?
Madam, you go first.
Oh, hey. Okay, well, my name is Madam Della. I'm a master psychic and a witch. And my lineage comes all the way from Salem, Massachusetts. And what I do is what I've been doing my whole life is giving readings with no tarot card and no information. I work with law enforcement. I do so much metaphysical work.
I guess it's my turn.
It's your turn.
Hey, it's JB. A little about me. I grew up in Baltimore. I've seen a lot of things as a young man and a young child that would make your skin crawl. Went in the Marine Corps. Was in the Marine Corps at the age of 18. Honorably discharged after 4 years. And then started my stint in federal law enforcement. I'm now retired. In 2000, I actually started my paranormal investigating. And in 2012, Madam decided we would step into the horror movie realm, and that's what we did. And that's where we're at today.
Well, JB, that's a big jump from being in, law enforcement to going out and doing the paranormal and investigations and then getting into making horror movies. Big difference there.
Oh, yeah, it is. Woo!
Well, how did some of your ex-colleagues take it from, I'm sure, have they ever teased you anything from going from law enforcement into, investigating the paranormal?
Let's say, sometimes you just don't say anything the next day when you come in to go on duty and they ask you what you did last night. You tell them you went to bed. Instead, you were in some cemetery somewhere investigating.
Yeah. I only did one investigation in a cemetery. And, the cemetery looked like there was no houses around it, and it's an old cemetery up near where I live. And me and my one son went in there with our, digital recorder, and, we were walking around, and we really didn't hear anything. But we had fun. Well, we got home, and we started playing back the recorder, and we heard little kids laughing and all that stuff. And I go, oh, wow, this is so exciting. Well, the next day I wanted to verify, that maybe, because we went there when it was kind of dark. But sure enough, in the back of the cemetery, maybe about 75 feet of trees, guess what? There was a house with a swing set in the back. So that really shot it down fast.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's been some scary situations coming from my side.
Well, can you share a couple of them, JB?
Sure, and we'll just say in 2000 when my mom passed away is what changed everything as far as the paranormal goes. We were heading back from Minnesota and heading back to Baltimore, and we stopped to get a hotel, and of course, I wanted to go wash up and everything, and I was looking in the mirror, and I saw my mom behind me. Ooh. Now, granted, I'm a cop. I'm skeptical at this point, and kind of shook me to the core because I looked in the mirror, and she was in her white gown and everything, and I had to hurry up and turn around and look, and she wasn't there anymore. So I just thought, being tired, driving, it's a 22-hour drive, and we stopped halfway back to Baltimore to get a hotel. The next morning, we're driving down the road, and my son is in the car, and he's looking at something in the back seat, and he's only 2 years old at the time. And I looked up in the mirror, and I'm speeding, coming across 70, and I'm speeding, and there's my mom in the back seat, and she looks right at me and says, "Slow down," and then disappeared. I had to pull over. I was like, what in the heck is going on? Had no idea what was going on, and the wife said, "She's just telling you to slow down. You have your child in the back seat. There's no rush. Your mom has passed on." So that was one episode that really woke me up. And what's funny is when I got back to Minnesota, my partner in Minnesota says to me, after I told him what happened, "Come over here, look in my desk drawer." He had paranormal equipment in there. Now, back then, I didn't know what the heck it was. Yep, so he was already doing it, but didn't want to say anything. So that's how I really got started into the paranormal side as far as investigating goes.
Now, JB, I got to ask you a question. When you saw your mom on the mirror, did she look like the age when she passed on, or was she younger looking?
She actually looked like I would say a little bit younger. Now, granted, working for the feds, I traveled, so seeing her maybe once a year, twice a year, if that. So she did look a little younger, but it was so fast, and it kind of shook me a little bit.
yeah, I would have drove off the road if it was me.
Yeah, almost did.
Ah, so that kind of opened your eyes up to the paranormal.
Yeah, as a young adult, I said, there's got to be something more. And then when I got back, my partner said he's been doing it for a couple years now, and that's how I started.
Well, what was your first experience going out and investigating?
First experience going out and investigating was a cemetery that he had taken me to, that he went to a couple times, and we didn't really get into the houses stuff yet. He was kind of, doing it for like 2 years, but by himself. And it was kind of creepy. It was different. I kind of was like, this is boring, that kind of thing at first. This is boring. And then he started getting hits on some of his equipment at the time, in which I knew then it was, EMF detectors and stuff like that now. Kind of was amazed. I'm like, something's going on. There's got to be something in the ground here. There's got to be, and it's like, no, it wasn't. This is a cemetery, and this is a grave. So, yeah, it was kind of creepy.
Did you ever get any recordings of people, asking questions or voices when you were in the cemetery being picked up by the recorder?
Oh, yeah. In one of our movies called Realms, we actually did an actual spirit box in the movie, real spirit box session at the cemetery. And let me tell you something. It was like, what? There's so many questions we were asking, and we're filming a movie, and the spirits were coming through communicating with us. So if you rented the movie Realms on Amazon, of course you would see that this was a real, true investigation we were doing at the cemetery, and they were actually coming through speaking with us.
Interesting. Now, have you ever thought, because, I've had other people going out, in cemeteries and mortuaries and stuff like that. I asked each one of these guests, did you ever ask them, hey, does anybody want a cigarette, and see if anybody responds? And every ghost hunter I've ever had on has said, I never thought about that. I got to ask you that. Do you ever, when you went to the cemetery or one of these places, kind of said, hey, anybody want a cigarette, and see if you get any response? Because look how many people were dying to smoke. Now, that's a bad joke. But, I mean, look how many people it smoked. That would be one of the very first, maybe replies you would get.
Madam owned a couple shops in Gettysburg, and we used to do that. We'd take out guests and stuff like that. So, of course, Gettysburg, the biggest battle there. And we'd go to some of the places and locations, and, yeah, we'd ask, and some of the guests would ask, and, they'd come across the spirit box, yes or no, or I didn't smoke. It was right on.
Interesting.
Madam, you have any what?
Well, back to the cemetery story. First, I just want to say it wasn't something that I just can't condone it. I mean, I didn't want to ever do that. I never wanted to communicate in a cemetery on that level with an SB7 spirit box, because I've always had a great deal of integrity for that type of, and respect for it. So we really did a lot of soul searching before we ever decided to do that day. And actually, it was one of JB's relatives that had just passed, and he had missed a funeral. So we thought, maybe he'll come through. I can't, and to make a long story short, some of the responses we had on the SB7 that day, it would stagger the devil himself. I mean, this stuff was so odd and so clear, and so it just really, even for me, and I have a really thick paranormal, acclimation. I'm very, very conditioned, and I did not exactly feel on my vibe for quite a few days afterwards, especially when they were answering questions so clearly over the SB7 that they were literally talking about areas in the cemetery that were actually in the cemetery. They would refer to a space, and that space was actually there. I mean, it was like direct communication with spirits that were right on the same exact time, linear time as we are. It wasn't like they were there right then and there. And actually, one of the questions